This is the game we use for what Koreans might call a deadly playground or a desperate gamble. Hello, I'm Ji-hoon, and I am on a quest to uncover all of the dark secrets that South Korea's entertainment industry has hidden in plain sight. And one of those secrets pertains to a little show called Squid Game, or as it's known in Korea, Gaim. It means the same thing, but trust me, it sounds a lot more ominous in Korean. And of course, as a certified Netflix binge watcher, I've done my fair bit of late night streaming, right? Just off the top of my head, I've watched Squid Game reaction videos, and Squid Game behind the scenes, so I know what I'm talking about. But when it comes to this particular show, whether you're just looking for a quick thrill or something to keep you up at night, it is worth learning that Squid Game isn't your typical Korean drama. And so without further ado, let us metaphorically press play as I uncover the ways that Squid Game is a masterclass in suspense and social commentary. You know, when I first started watching Squid Game, the first confusing thing I noticed is that the characters, much like elevators in American hotels, kept taking me to different emotional floors than I expected. Ji-hoon, what do you mean by that? Well, here's how the characters in Squid Game work. We start with Seong Ji-hun, our protagonist, a down-on-his-luck gambling addict who can't even buy his daughter a proper birthday gift. When you first meet him, you press L for loser, but as the game progresses, you find yourself pressing H for hero or maybe S for survivor, and you get my drift. In Squid Game, it's a little bit different because that same floor where you think you've got a character figured out suddenly drops away, revealing new depths. Take Nam, for instance, the frail old man who seems harmless and kind. You start by pressing G for grandfather figure, but by the end, you're frantically pressing M for mastermind. And then you get to your final opinion of him. And this is where those pan-Korean differences really take shape, or should I say stakes? Because there's one key rule in Squid Game: the games are simple, but the consequences are anything but. And the reason for this, as we all know, is that Korea marginally outdramas other countries. But it's also because Squid Game is about a 40th the cost of a Hollywood blockbuster, and so we just sort of cram in the tension, in fact, awkwardly. A tiny dorm room was where I first met the main characters, and they were staying in a space about the size of this studio, which surprisingly, given that I am often dubbed Korea's finest Netflix sensation, is not that big. And at the best of times, I don't like being in close proximity to humans. But being squashed in a room with 456 desperate players was the second most horrifying experience of my life. And I know what you're thinking, ooh, Ji-hoon, what was the first? Being squashed in the playground with them during the first game. But the next time we met in the glass bridge game, we sure did have a chuckle, at least I think we did. I couldn't hear them because they were falling to their deaths on the other side of the room. You see, Squid Game's set pieces, like its social commentary or its body count, are just bigger. I mean, they have to be, right? Especially given what we've discovered on this channel about the differences in wealth inequality. And of course, a set is not the only place in Squid Game where you'd lie down. In addition to the bunk beds, the cafeteria floor, and in desperate times, the bathroom stall, which should prompt nobody to ask me about the marble game incident, there is also the killing floor. And I know what you're thinking, yes, Ji-hoon, the killing floor has separate areas for winners and losers. Well, firstly, that's not always true, and secondly, that's not where I was going with this. I was actually gonna mention the height difference because while in most shows, the characters and their moral standings are more or less level with each other, this is often not the case in Squid Game. To go from being a good person to a survivor, you often have to kind of step up because the bottom of the moral barrel is higher up than you'd think. There's one thing to remember this, getting in, but getting out when your hands are bloody and your conscience is heavy, it could lead to an unintentionally hilarious TikTok video. In fact, I do have footage, but I can't show it on here because I did get hundreds of complaints and an equal number of death threats. So just take my word for it, Player numbers are of course found on many contestants and through much of the series, but never more do I need them than when I am trying to keep track of who is still alive. So because of this, it is worth remembering some of the key differences between the main characters' numbers. Don't take my word for it, instead, listen to me from just a second from now. It was once said by me in Just a Second From Now that you can tell a lot about a character by the number on their tracksuit. And given its unparalleled record of boasting larger numbers than everyone else, player 456 might fancy his chances of winning the my dash number single quote s dash bigger dash than dash your dash number debate. But the truth is, and you might find this shocking, player 1's significance is larger. You can't talk about Squid Game without talking about games. Games are the protruding challenges that keep the plot attached to the theme like a docked plane. And the only reason I made an aviation sim there was to draw your attention to the miniature control tower I made from dodgy cards while I was bored. Anyway, there are several key differences in this department. In children's games, the stakes are ever so slightly lower and crucially less lethal. This makes them fun and impossible to die from. How do I know that? Because I was 14 once. But whereas children's games are decidedly harmless, that's not always the case in Squid Game. Sure, red light, green light looks innocent enough, definitely does have a nostalgic charm. But Tug of War, which is easily the more outgoing and competitive of the two, is bipolar due to the manner in which each team pulls the rope. There's also a difference in how they end. In children's games, the loser just goes home, thus making it easier to play again tomorrow. And the lethal connection of Squid Game means that you can do this in theory, but it's not recommended. One of the biggest concerns for viewers watching Squid Game, aside from being forced to eat honeycomb without breaking it, is the great moral divide. In normal society, murder is categorized as illegal while it's generally encouraged in the game. Moreover, normal society operates on a system of laws and Squid Game on chaos. What does all of this mean? Well, let us just say that you want to use your moral compass in Squid Game, but it doesn't run on desperation, is not dual-natured, or is incompatible with survival. In that instance, you'll need to run to the nearest guard to pick up some motivation. A guard will convert your morality from lawful to the morality of the game. In the event that your motivation doesn't come with a tracksuit, be sure to also pick up one of these. This tracksuit is magic. It allows you to turn your everyday persona into a Squid Game player. For players visiting normal society, the same applies but in reverse. A step-down moral converter or transformer might also be needed to safely integrate into society. Both are widely unavailable for players on Amazon. I'd say the most obvious difference between normal life and Squid Game is the stakes. When I first entered the game, I couldn't believe how tense it was, and not in a Morgan Freeman type way. I mean, this was a children's game, I just mean it was deadly. But in normal life, you don't usually have that problem and or luxury because a significant amount of everyday activities are either not life-threatening or not life-threatening well. This is a particular problem when you're squished in a game with 455 other desperate players. As with many areas of life, Squid Game is its own subgenre of Korean versus global word differences. Take, for instance, the name that we assign to that helpful staff member who helps you with your last moments when you're losing a game. In Korea and much of the rest of Squid Game, this person is known as a guard. This is the word we use for what non-players might call a murderer or an executioner. Also, whether it's situated on the ground or the first floor, players and viewers also can't agree on what you call that area of the game that you enter upon entering. Upon entering Squid Game, we usually opt for the word hell. Please note that viewers, just like Podrons on my most recent secret stream, are divided on whether this should be pronounced hell or living nightmare. Either way, players will often call this area the point of no return. More often than not, players will call a guard a pink soldier, viewers will call a pink soldier a guard, while players have about 100 words for death. Chief among these are elimination, game over, lights out, or the big sleep, and finally, VIPs. This is something I've encountered far more in Squid Game than I have in normal life. This is a viewing service offered at games in which you pay to watch others fight for their lives, but the use of VIP might be confusing to some viewers. You might think of a VIP, often pronounced very important person, as someone deserving of respect. A fine example of which is not the characters from Squid Game that I somehow keep mentioning in my videos just by coincidence. That's it for this video. Let me know in the comments below some of the Squid Game moments that kept you on the edge of your seat. I'm Ji-hoon Kim. You can follow me on Twitter at lost_in_squid_game and forget to subscribe to my channels so that my videos don't get lost in the algorithm. Thank you to my patrons for literally making this video happen. Until the next video, goodbye, and may the odds be ever in your favor. Wait, wrong dystopian nightmare.